Harinama Chintamani, chapter 5. And this is the second offense against the chanting of the holy name. That's the topic. The first offense wasn't a nice one. It was blaspheming devotees, sadhuninda. This one doesn't sound as harsh, but it's also detrimental. Maybe not so, but as relevant for those of us in the West that don't have so much affinity for demigods. But it's one of the offenses against the chanting of the holy name. Here's the Sanskrit. Devan Tare Svatantra Aparada. Deva, that's the demigods. Devantare Svantantra Aparada. To consider the names of the demigods like Lord Shiva or Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. So you see in the image, or on the left side, that's Brahma on his lotus flower. And the center is Lord Vishnu, and the right dancing pose is Lord Shiva. So this is not one of the longest chapters. It's much shorter than yesterday's. Glory to Lord Chaitanya, life of Gadadhar. Glory to Lord Nityananda, life of Janava Devi. Glory to Advaita, the husband of Sita. Glory to Srivas and all the devotees of the Lord. This is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Panchatattva mantra that begins every single chapter. So he's listing the 5 members of the Panchatattva in a different order, going from Lord Chaitanya to Lord Chaitanya's left, Gadadhar, then back the other side, Nityananda, Advaita, and Srivas. Respectfully folding his hands, Haridas then said, "O Master of the Worlds, please hear the second offense, because this is continuing to respond to a question of Lord Chaitanya. Please identify the offenses against chanting of the holy name." The painting is from Jagannath Puri. We know that because in the background there's the dome of the Jagannath temple. And Haridas, with his little cottage there, is seeing the dome of the Jagannath temple from a distance, according to his request. Lord Vishnu is the supreme non-dual truth. His form is spiritual. He is always situated in pure goodness. That's Vishnu. Then Krishna. Lord Krishna, who enjoys pastimes in Goloka, is the best of all truths. He is the reservoir of all rasas. He is decorated with 64 auspicious qualities. Now this magic number of 64 becomes important because other forms that expand from Lord Krishna have less than 64. And less percentages of those less than 64 also. This is from Rupa Goswami's teaching. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is expanding or expounding Lord Chaitanya's Rupa Goswami's teaching through this book. 60 of these qualities are manifest in Lord Narayana's form. The same 60 qualities are manifest in Lord Vishnu's pastimes also. So these are forms of the Lord in Vaikuntha, each with 4 arms, but he has special characteristics. The same 60 qualities are manifested in the Purusha avatars and the Shvangsa avatars. We're going to hear these terms, Svangsa as distinct from the tiny living entity, which is Vibhinangsha. Anksha means a part, and there's a Swangsha and Vibhinangsha. So you'll hear that Vibhinangsha term shortly. So 60. All of these different features have 60 of the 64. Lord Vishnu's Vibhinangshas, there we are, or separated potencies, are of two kinds. The Jiva souls possess 50 of these qualities in quantities like a drop of a drop, or portion of a portion, a drop of a drop. So living entities are also expansions by potency. They're marginal potency, but spiritual. So they have less. They have 50 total qualities out of the 64, but in a small quantity. The demigods headed by Lord Shiva are also Vibhinangshas, but they are not like ordinary individual souls. They possess 55 of these qualities. The presence of 60 of these qualities indicates Lord Vishnu. That's pretty simple. This is the foundation of why don't equate them. And their names, why not equate their names? There's some puzzled fellows. Very ignorant people who think the demigods are equal to Lord Vishnu do not understand the truth about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Vishnu is the supreme controller of this material world. The demigods, headed by Shiva, are servants who carry out Lord Vishnu's commands. Some people say that when it comes into contact with Maya's three material modes, the impersonal Brahman becomes the demigods. Boo! He's going to express dissatisfaction with that idea. There's some debate from various philosophies on this subject. The conclusion of the scriptures is that Lord Narayana is the supreme object of worship. Following his command, Brahma and Shiva create and destroy the material universe. Now, they have functions in relation to the universe, very, very, very powerful personalities with powerful functions, but they do so following his command and invested with his potencies to do these services. People who neglect Lord Narayana and worship the demigods instead remain plunged in the world of birth and death, meaning these personalities, Brahma and Shiva, cannot grant liberation or freedom from the cycle of birth and death. They can grant many things, but they can't grant liberation, and therefore plunged in the world of birth and death. Then he touches on another misconception, philosophical misconception. Some people say, I know very well that Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Lord. I know that the Vedas say that Lord Vishnu is present everywhere in this material world. Therefore, Lord Vishnu resides in all the demigods. Therefore, when one worships the demigods, one worships Lord Vishnu also. Pretty clever. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur or Haridas Thakur doesn't appreciate that. To speak these words is forbidden. They are not teaching the scriptures. To worship the demigods in this way is forbidden. And now, Lord Vishnu worship is watering the roots of the tree, in case you couldn't figure out. There's no tree, it's flowers. Lord Vishnu is present everywhere in the material world, not only in demigods and flowers. That you certainly may say, The truth is that by worshipping Lord Vishnu, one also worships all the demigods. If one waters a tree's roots, the whole tree will flourish. However, if one waters only the leaves and not the roots, the tree will die. Therefore, if I neglect the demigods and worship only Vishnu, by that action I attain the results of worshipping all the demigods. From ancient times, the Vedas have honored this rule. Those who neglect this rule are headed for trouble. That's a nice way to put it. Cycle of birth and death, at least. With the arrival of Kali Yuga, and with the entrance of the misleading Mayavad theory, the people, thinking them equal to Lord Vishnu, now worship many demigods. So this is a little history. So it's a newer kind of history because the introduction of impersonal teaching, or the emphasis upon impersonal teaching, isn't as old as the Vedas. But it certainly gave rise to an increase of worship of the demigods. Each demigod grants a specific boon, but Lord Vishnu grants all boons. He is the protector and maintainer of all. Now this is, the painting is levels of worship. Down at the bottom is worship of ghosts and spirits. In the middle is a worship of a man, or a human, a person, and the upper is worship of demigods. If the people filled with material desires knew the truth, they would turn from the demigods and attain the boons they wish by worshipping Lord Vishnu. Now, remember his audience. He's writing this in 1900. Of course, he's writing it for future generations like us, but his audience of the time there was not an understanding of Shuddha Bhakti for sure. It was rare to find even mixed Bhakti, but strong was worship of demigods, particularly in Bengal. Devi. What a Grahastha Vaishnava should do. A Grahastha, who is a devotee of Lord Vishnu, should unhesitatingly worship Lord Vishnu with his every deed. Chanting Vedic mantras in various rituals or samskaras, beginning with Garbhadana samskara and ending at the cremation ground. He should worship Lord Vishnu. So from the beginning of his life to the end of life, Lord Vishnu is kept at the center. Nice photograph. Thinking them as devotional service, he performs the various rituals and samskaras. By offering them the remnants of what was offered to Lord Krishna, he pleases the demigods and pitas. He avoids worshipping the many demigods and goddesses because they are all devotees of Lord Krishna. They are satisfied with his actions. So that's if there's a prohibition, what's the injunction? The prohibition is don't equate them, the demigods and Vishnu. What about the demigods then? You offer them Vishnu Prasad. That's what's done in Jagannath Puri. If somebody has some affinity for something, some demigod, that's a procedure they can follow. Now he's going to speak about the eligibility and specifically point to the Varnashram system. This is one of a few paintings on the Varnashram system. Obviously, on the left, there's a Brahmana. In fact, it says Brahmin. And then next to him is a Kshatriya with a spear. And next to him is a Vaishya, a mercantile businessman, and over on the right is a laborer. So these are the four occupations or varnas, and everyone's eligible. Human beings who, in this material world, follow the duties of the varnas walk on the path of piety in their journey carrying this material body. It's a nice way to put it. Outcasts and persons of mixed birth should accept the role of Shudras, because without this fourth order, one cannot be pious in the world of birth and death. So one's birth may not be pious, in various categories of not so pious, but accepting the occupation that's suited for that position, then they become pious, naturally so. Here's another painting, a BBT painting of the four varnas. They're kind of obvious. Upper left, the Brahmin. Upper right, the Kshatriya. Lower left, the Vaishya. Lower right, the Vaishya, agriculture. And then Shudra, one who's just assisting. And Krishna's in the middle. In this world of birth and death, one should follow the system of four varnas, act righteously and purely, serve Lord Krishna. If one follows the four varnas but does not worship Lord Krishna, he'll be thrown into hell. How do we understand that one? Well, the only way I can understand it is invariably there's going to be even good persons trying to follow, etc., etc. They'll make mistakes, and for mistakes, there's consequences. And the consequences is not pleasant. It's a downward direction if there's mistakes, and everyone makes mistakes because one of the four defects of conditioned souls, we make mistakes. Following the Varna's rules, one should worship Lord Krishna. This is called Bhakti Yoga, or the yoga of devotional service. Now, there are different ways of describing what that is. Varnashram Dharma can be called Karma Yoga, and depending upon the consciousness of the individual, it can also be called Bhakti Yoga. By practicing Bhakti Yoga, at the end, one finds ecstatic love or bhava for Lord Krishna arise within him. That is the conclusion of all the scriptures. This is a teaching similar to what we heard about Nama-abhasa. Nama-abhasa. Nama-abhasa? You familiar with what that term means? No? Shuddha and abhas and aparad. So, offense, clearing stage, pure. So the abhas has different ways of translating what that means or understanding what that means. It's the name that's not the pure name. So it's the name that's blocked, like the sun is blocked by clouds. So that's one kind of, so the clouds of offense and the mist or fog of ignorance, one can chant without really understanding, or by having an improper, really a wrong understanding, a misunderstanding. That's abhas. There's different categories. So what to do when you have it? You can work on getting proper knowledge. That method is clear, straightforward. Shastra, taught by guru, get proper knowledge. And then that gets addressed. And then there's the consequences of previous and then ongoing offenses. So that's what that's what the section that we're covering now is offenses. In eradication of offenses, part of what to do is just continuously chant with faith. So here he's saying something not the same but similar. That is, one may not be pure, but if one follows the system Varnashram, one becomes pure. And in the mature stage of becoming pure, the stage of bhava bhakti can arise. Then you're not just pure, you're the stage of bhava bhakti. So it's laudable, it's being encouraged here. Not just do duties nicely, but do them with devotion for Krishna nicely, and done nicely in due course of time. It may be a little slower than the direct method, but gradually the stage of bhava can arise. That's what he's teaching. When ecstatic love for Lord Krishna arises, there is no need to follow the many rules and regulations. Now, one may still follow rules and regulations, but if rules and regulations are not followed because the stage of bhava is overwhelming the individual, they may not observe a particular rule or regulation because they're so absorbed in bhava. So there's no offense due to that. That's the point here. When this ecstatic love arises, the soul's journey taken in the vehicle of the material body is successful. Again, a very nice way to put it. The soul's journey in the vehicle of the material body is successful. Nice way to put it. The pure truth is that Lord Vishnu is not different from his name and qualities. And now we're back to the main theme of the whole book, the benefit of chanting the name. This is proper understanding. The mist of ignorance is dissipated by this knowledge. If one does not understand that Lord Vishnu is not different from his name, form, and qualities, then one's chanting will be Nama-abhasa. Nama-abhasa. We're teaching your daughter about Nama-abhasa. Have you heard that phrase before, Nama-abhasa? No, Nama-abhasa. You have to look at Dad to make sure, but you haven't heard it before. So we'll do it again because we did it a little bit before. There's beginning, there's intermediate, and there's advanced. Beginning is you're making offense. The intermediate is clearing offenses. And advanced is no more offenses. So this is discussing offenses in chanting. And when offenses are removed, there's Nama-abhasa. Excuse me. If one doesn't have a proper understanding, then for sure it's going to be Nama-abhasa. If one doesn't understand the name of Krishna and Krishna are not different, then that's a type of Nama-abhasa. It's chanting in ignorance. It is not possible to attain pure love or prema for Lord Krishna in this way. That means we need to overcome that particular type of Nama-abhasa. We need proper knowledge. Now, is knowledge enough? How many times have we heard the name of Krishna and Krishna are not different? N number of times you've heard it. Many, 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 many. Too many to count. Now, how much realization do we have about that? Pretty thin realization about that. So knowledge is not enough because we have knowledge. Then we have to act on that knowledge or chant with that understanding. We discussed this twice already. The stage of realization comes when offenses are gone. And when offenses are gone, you get the realization. But there has to be some faith in the fact in order to get there. One needs guidance in proper chanting, and then strive to properly chant. And then the tendency to be distracted, etc., 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 will be diminished. We'll get to that's one of the offenses in this Harinama Chintamani. Maybe we'll go there tomorrow since it's such an important one, being inattentive while chanting. So here's, on the left side, there's Jamuna chanting, and during Kirtan, it's Jamuna walking with Prabhupada. In the middle, that she's chanting with George Harrison. On the left, she's chanting at some kind of a public program. By the mercy of a bona fide spiritual master, the anartha, that is this misunderstanding, becomes destroyed. The name is different than the person. Misunderstanding. Worshipping the holy name, that person eventually attains the stage of pure chanting. Now Haridas Thakur is going to take a look at one of the misunderstandings of Mayavadis. Here it is. The speculative philosophers claim that Lord Krishna is different from his name, form, and qualities. That idea is an offense. An offense they do not abandon. The Mayavadis say, the supreme truth is the impersonal Brahman, which is quality-less, change-less, and form-less. Lord Vishnu's names and forms are created by Maya. When Maya disappears, Vishnu merges into the impersonal Brahman. It hurts to even hear that. All these ideas are illusions, fallacies. So he's doing what Prabhupada would consistently do. He's confronting directly impersonal teaching and their misunderstanding of the chanting of Krishna's name. Mayavadis chant Krishna's name too. That was my first introduction in college to chanting, public chanting. A Mayavadi fellow was traveling around the college circuit, and I was attracted because I didn't know what he was doing. But I was attracted to the chanting. So how does a devotee regard these teachings? Well, Haridas Thakur says, a saintly devotee takes shelter of the holy name alone. He worships Lord Krishna as the only supreme Lord. He turns from other deities. However, he does not blaspheme the demigods or other scriptures, saying, they are servants of Lord Krishna. He worships and honors the demigods. Whenever he sees the deities of the demigods, he says, he is a servant of Lord Krishna. Then he bows down to offer respect. This is good teaching for us. Sometimes in the course of going here and there and interacting with people, they want us to go to some place. And there's demigod worship, and how do we behave in front of demigods? Sometimes that happens. It happened to me. They didn't really know, but now it's very clear. See them as they are, and the bowing before them is to their fact that they're devotees, very elevated devotees. If the Mayavadis worship Lord Vishnu and offer things to him, out of fear, the devotees will not accept the remnants of those offerings. Another nice instruction. Now, that's not something that we commonly have to deal with, but sometimes it comes up. There's a devotee in Australia that wrote to me saying, what do we do when such and such? And you don't disrespect, but at the same time you don't accept the prasad that's been offered. It's because it's not prasadam. Rather, to accept the remnants of offerings of the demigods is an offense. Pure devotees never accept such offerings. However, when he worships Lord Vishnu, a pure devotee may also worship the demigods and then offer to them the remnants of what he has first offered to Lord Vishnu. Again, this is what's done in Jagannath Puri. Have you been to Jagannath Puri? You want to go someday? So if you go someday, they may let you inside. But they're going to ask you, what's your gotra? You know what that means? What's the family line? So you have to have a nice answer. There's a devotee family, a Punjabi family from Chicago, the Qatar family. Gulshan Qatar, they wouldn't let her in. She said, here's my gotra, and here's where I was born, and we won't let you in. They didn't believe her. And she's Indian. She was born in India, born in Punjab. So they're like, anyway, so if you get to go inside, or I haven't been inside, but I know what goes on inside. One of the procedures they follow is how many times? 52 times a day. 52 times? 50? 52. 52 times a day. They make, as soon as one offering is taken away, they put another offering. And then that offering is taken away, they put another offering. And then, so all day long. So when it's offered, it's now Jagannath Prasad. So it's taken and placed before different deities in the temple. Bimala Devi is, I think, the first one. That's the name that Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave to his son, Bhaktisiddhanta. Bimala Prasad. So it's offered to the demigods because it's Vishnu Prasad. So they're honoring that they take from that altar, put another one, and so forth. And then eventually it goes to the Brahmins. And then it goes to the stalls outside and so forth. Sold to the public. Jagannath Prasad in baskets. So it's a way by which demigods are legitimately, now it's not a standard that we do so much in ISKCON, but it is an authorized way to offer one's respect, appropriate respect to demigods in this way. Now, what about the position of Lord Shiva? Sometimes that question comes up. Radha, do you know the answer to that question? Here, let's see what it says. Material names and forms are different from the person to whom they refer. However, spiritual names and forms are not different from the person to whom they refer. To think Lord Vishnu is different from his names and forms is a great mistake, an anartha or an offense. To think that Lord Shiva is independent of Lord Vishnu is also a great mistake or an offense. And that's in fact the offense that we're discussing. To think the names of Shiva or Brahma or any of the demigods equal to or independent from an offense. How to remedy this offense? It looks like a nice remedy. Although one may have foolishly thought Lord Vishnu on the same level as the demigods, if one understands the truth of Lord Vishnu and also repents his previous misunderstanding, then Lord Vishnu will forgive his offense. The offender will then be careful not to commit that offense again. Very simple. Lord Krishna is the friend of his devotees. His nature is to forgive their previous mistakes. He's an ocean of mercy, an ocean of forgiveness. A Vaishnav should avoid demigod worshippers. He should worship Lord Vishnu. And that's it. Here's the last slide. This Harinama Chintamani is the very life of Bhakti Vinod, who stays at Haridasa's feet. Safe place to stay. He's giving essentially teachings to overcome the mist of ignorance and the clouds of anarthas. And anarthas arise. Essentially, each of the 10 anarthas is, with the exception of inattentiveness, it's due to a misconception, seeing something that's spiritual as material, or seeing something that's material as spiritual, but seeing something that's spiritual as material. Like the name of Vishnu is just like any of the other names. Not so. Not so. Is Harinama Chintamani going to be our topic for tomorrow?
I have to check it.
Okay, you let me know. Because I'm thinking maybe we'll do the inattentiveness one. Because that's something that really is immediately relevant for everyone. Okay, that's chapter 5. The second offense against chanting. Pretty straightforward. Let's see if there's some discussion. Wow. That was quick. She's got something already. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a number of questions.
Really?
My first one is, what about you think about the offense as if you're going to say it out loud, but you're thinking the offense in your head that the demigods are equal or independent to Lord Vishnu. What about you think it? Is that an offense?
No.
Okay.
What happens when you have a misconception is what's inside, in course of time, comes outside. Right? Next.
My next question is, can we worship Hanuman because he's a devotee of Lord Vishnu or Lord Rama? And people say that it's good to worship or revere devotees of Krishna.
Well, it's the demigods are devotees. Lord Shiva is a devotee. Garuda is a devotee. You're a devotee. So now, what's the answer to that one? Now, there are persons who have regard for Hanuman for sure. Did you go to that place in? No, besides Anjaneya Hill, there's a temple in Hampi. Were you there?
Yeah.
You were there. There's a temple where Vedanta Deshika is a Vaishnav from the Madhva line, Madhvacharya. He was offering prayers to Hanuman at Hampi. Hampi is not far from the headquarters of...
We went there.
Yeah. So, you went there. Did you
Yes.
see the deity? So, here's the story. Using charcoal, he made an image of Hanuman and he was offering prayers to Hanuman. And Hanuman appeared on that stone. And as soon as he finished, then the image disappeared. And that happened a number of days in a row.
Then they put that yantra around.
No, but not yet. That comes later. So later, Hanuman himself came. Hanuman came, appeared, and said, make a deity in that same image that you were envisioning. And there's, for the number of days, whatever, it was 9 days or something like that. And the image, the yantra, has 9 Hanumans around the outside. And then a picture of Hanuman in that same form that he showed himself to Vedanta Deshika.
Now I remember the place.
Now remember the place. And that same Vedanta Deshika, he's one of the exalted acharyas in the line of Madhvacharya. They're very strict. They're known to be very strict. But he was worshipping Hanuman. He established many Hanuman temples. Hanuman gave him his darshan. But how was he seeing Hanuman? There's no question about it. He was seeing Hanuman as the devotee of Ram. He wasn't specifically worshipping or separately worshipping Hanuman. He was worshipping Lord Ram by respecting Hanuman. Now, so there's a distinction between a demigod worship. You remember what it said. Well, Vishnu is inside, and so worshipping the demigods is the same as worshipping Vishnu because Vishnu is within. So it's not. We're respecting. Vedanta Deshika is worshipping and respecting the bhakti of Hanuman. And through the bhakti of Hanuman, Ram Bhakti. Now it's a difference of consciousness, which is hard to detect from one worshipper to the next. What the consciousness, you hook them up to a bhakti meter and say, well, their consciousness hits a 10, so it's okay. And their consciousness hits a 1, so it's not okay. It's not quite like that. It's actually worship of Ram. And giving respect to the bhakti that Hanuman has for Ram. That's my understanding anyway.
So it is fine to worship Hanuman, but...
You're asking the same question again.
Just clarifying.
And my short answer is depends on consciousness.
So you have to thank Hanuman as a devotee. So another question.
Like some people put a murti of Haridas Thakur. Right? You've seen. Yeah. Jai Jagannath had a life-size Haridas Thakur carved in wood. He was gifted to him. So I think there's some history of how he got it. But it's not like he's seeing Haridas Thakur and he's worshipping Haridas Thakur. He's petitioning Haridas Thakur for mercy to be able to chant purely. You get the idea. Okay, next.
So you were talking about how Puri people, the guards, I think they're guards for the Puri temple.
Yeah.
So why do they have to discriminate between white people and Indian people?
Because they have their own ideas.
But some devotees are white, but they're also very sacred devotees.
Yes.
And if they're not...
Your argument is a good argument. They don't agree with you.
Because...
You could go and argue with them. And they won't let you in. Don't argue with me. Argue with them. Your argument, Prabhupada discussed with them. Many have discussed with them. They're unyielding. They're fixed in their tradition, and they're not going to move by heaven and earth. So don't argue with me about it.
Well, my question is that isn't that an offense to pure devotees?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is a Vaishnava aparadha?
Yeah.
Okay.
They have a misconception. But they're not going to move. And is there a responsibility for that? Yeah. Next.
This is my last question. So, what you were talking about, how even if you follow your caste system, but do not worship Lord Krishna, then you go to hell.
Yeah, we touched on that. It's not. I don't have a complete answer for that statement. It's what it says. I read what it says.
So, what about other religions? So,
What about them?
if they're following their caste systems,
They're not following the caste system. They're following their teachings, which is not the caste system, or the 4 varnas and 4 ashrams. They have another system. They're following their system, so they're becoming elevated and benefited. They're following their
so they
system.
won't go to hell.
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Others, way in the back.
Krishna Maharaj, this is about the food offered to demigods.
Before we go ahead, there's something that Radha, I think you would appreciate listening to, is an interview. It was a podcast with Radhika Raman. I forget what the title of it is, but it has to do with something to do about time. I forget exactly.
With Yogeshwar Prabhu? Is it the interview with Yogeshwar Prabhu?
What was the title of it? Yeah, it was Yogeshwar Prabhu. Yes. Huh?
I have that.
Okay. But he's speaking about, because his career is he's a teacher of religious studies, and it's something that he speaks about, of appreciating truth that's within different religions. Not whether, is this the truth or is that the truth, because they're not saying the same truth. But, I think you'll find it beneficial to listen to understand how to appreciate people who have different faiths than his Vaishnava, upbringing. It doesn't compromise his faith in his Vaishnava or practices in his Vaishnava upbringing to recognize there's truth and benefit in so many other teachings and practices properly followed. Now, your question.
Past is present.
Huh?
The past as present.
Okay.
The direction?
The past as present.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So we were talking about food offered to demigods. Food offered to demigods is taking that as an offense. So in circumstances where to build a relationship, what I do is I just keep some prasadam with me and then just add the prasadam and eat it. But I just wanted to check if that's the right process or no.
You can eat the prasad, but you can't eat the prasad mixed with something that's not.
Sure. So
Find a convenient way to avoid the awkward circumstance.
Sure.
Whatever seems to work, but that's not a solution.
Sure. Thank you, Maharaj.
We're going to do others. Radha can wait till the very end. We'll come with others before.
Maharaj, to continue the same question, how do you react to somebody giving you prasad for offer to demigod, and you don't want to be disrespectful to their feelings.
I've never had it happen. Have you had it happen?
No.
No.
I mean, I was taking it, so never have it happened.
Okay.
And if you take it from a consciousness,
I would do something like this. I would take it but not eat it. Oh, thank you. And you put it in your hand.
and then what do you do with it? Like
Depends on what you give it to the pigeons or
got it.
or
Put it in a river or something.
Or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like I've been in circumstances where people give chocolate.
Okay.
And I don't say, sorry, Charlie, I don't take chocolate. Oh, thank you. Because they're making an offering that it's not something I'm going to, offer to Krishna. But they made an offering. They can offer something else that's not something I'm going to use, but I accept it because it's an offering. And then find another place where it can. Yeah.
There's another question. Yeah, it is on. I was just thinking of another question. The Varnashram Dharam, right? The four caste system.
Yeah.
We do what we've been doing from when we grew up, but how do we know what's our caste system? What part do we?
What's the designation for you?
Exactly.
Guru Sadhu Shastra.
Okay.
I mean, Shastra gives some indication, and then, you can, according to what Shastra says, you can examine, no, in modern times, everything has kind of been put in a blender and turned on high speed. Very mixed up. So it's not very clear distinctions, but there are propensities, and there's somewhat of a mix for different people. But you step back with the lens of Scripture and look at tendencies over a period of time through the lens of Scripture, you get some indication. And those that are guiding you, they can also detect and then guide accordingly. It's not so precise like a box. This box, that box, the other box. Which is your box. It's not quite like that, but tendencies.
So in that case, how do you? I mean, till you find what it is, do you just continue what you're doing? Like, what do you?
You reflect. Get purified by the processes of purification, various, and through purification and understanding of Scripture, then slowly, some understanding starts to become a little more clear, a little more clear, a little more clear.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, we do exercise a certain amount of austerity and, cleanliness and certain rules and regulations for preparation of bhog for Krishna.
Good.
And whereas Scripture says you can chant the holy name in any time, place, and circumstance. So how do we understand this in relation to the name and form of Krishna being the same, without being offensive towards the name, the holy name?
Meaning, if you're in some awkward circumstances, is it okay to still chant?
Yes.
That's your question?
I mean, the Scripture says it's okay to chant, sometimes even without taking a shower,
Yes.
or...
That's right.
But it's not okay to prepare prasad without,
That's right. That's right.
So how do I understand this in relation to the name and the form being the same.
Well, because it's Nitya Shuddho. Purna Shuddho Nitya Mukto, excuse me. You know that verse, right?
No.
Okay, the book Harinama Chintamani is resting on or drawn from a verse from Padma Purana that says, Nama Chintamani Krishnas. Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha is the verse is covered in an earlier chapter. Then the third line, Purna Shuddho, you know the meaning? Purna Shuddho, Nitya Mukto, Nitya Mukto, eternally liberated. And then the last line is non-different. Then the name and the person are non-different. Abhinatvam Nama Namino, that's the last line. So, because the name is completely pure, it doesn't become contaminated. It rather purifies what it comes in contact with. We told this story, showed a picture of Gopal Guru Goswami. This may help you, responsive to your question. He was a contemporary of Lord Chaitanya, much younger. He was just 5 years old when, in the place where Lord Chaitanya was staying, there was a Brahmana who was just incessantly chanting. His tongue would chant no matter what. So one day, this little boy, Gopal, 5-year-old boy, saw the Brahmana literally holding his tongue and running. So later he asked the Brahmin, what were you doing? He said, I had to go to the toilet, but my tongue won't stop chanting, so I didn't want to make the offense of having my tongue chanting the name when I went to the toilet. And the little boy chastised him. Said, don't you know what the scripture says? The holy name is Nitya Mukto, Purna Shuddho, Nitya Mukto. You can't contaminate the name. Why are you holding your tongue? And that he instructed this elder Brahmin in that way was heard by Lord Chaitanya, and he said he should be called Gopal Guru because he's instructing properly the Brahmana. But no matter where you are, you can chant. No matter what your bodily condition is, and you can chant. When we told the story, we don't take our bead bag into the bathroom, but we can chant in the bathroom. So, in any circumstance, you can chant, whether clean or not clean. That Om Apavitra Pavitro Va. You know that verse? Yeah. Sarvavasam Gato Viva Yasmaret Pundarikaksham. So you remember the lotus-eyed Vishnu or Krishna when calling his name, naturally so. So, Pavitra or Apavitra? Chant, and one becomes purified. Or Sarvatma Snapanam. You take the bath, Snapanam, of the chanting of the holy name. We do the other baths too, but then
Yes.
okay.
Maharaj, I have a question.
Well, we have to give you the microphone. We have
Take your permission first.
we
I
have some.
question.
It's okay, but we have some people online. They want to hear your question.
And I was asking for permission if I can ask questions not related to.
Yeah, you can. I'm used to it.
Sorry. Yes. The first question is the talk you had in the Boston temple. You had mentioned about the left wing gopis and the right wing gopis. Are you able to expand on that?
You've never heard that one before?
I've heard just exactly that sentence before, but I don't know the differentiation and
Okay.
more detail.
Radha and her gopi friends are left wing. Vama is the Sanskrit phrase. And they're feisty. They talk back to Krishna. They have disputes with Krishna. It's out of love, knowing that Krishna likes that more. And then the right-wing group, they're very obedient. They never talk back, and they're very submissive. Like Rukmini is in that right-wing group, and Satyabhama is in the left-wing group. She talks back. She says things that are contrary, and so that's the left-wing tendency. It's a kind of love. They don't do it out of haughtiness. They do it out of love. But it's just part of their mood of love. And Krishna likes. He likes it even more than yes sir, no sir.
Anything else more on this? Like, I'm trying to understand the whole picture in relation to Krishna. Like, I mean, we always think of Krishna and Radha.
In relation to Krishna, there's everything. And part of everything is those that are very submissive and obedient, and those that are filled with love, but the intimacy is such that they can say contrary things in a loving way. That's it in the essence. And there's so much variegatedness. You want to get some ideas of what way does that left-wing gopi, right-wing gopi thing display itself. Read the writings of our Goswamis, and they'll give examples.
Okay, because I'm thinking in terms of, is there like a hierarchy there? Because we always put Srimati Radharani on the top, but she's the leader, as you said, of
even the right-wing gopis are expansions of her.
Okay.
All the gopis are expansions of her. All the gopis are expansions of her. So within her is everything. But she primarily exemplifies the left-wing mood. This, talk back,
okay,
contradict, make jokes, get angry with Krishna, become sulky.
That's typical of the material world vibes.
Yeah, but it's not centered on ego. It's centered on love for Krishna.
Yes.
And there's a nice book, one of the many writings of Jiva Goswami, is where Radharani she left. She became very angry because Krishna was with Chandravali, and she found out. So, I don't want to see his face again. And she left into the forest. And Krishna showed up, and Radharani's gone. Not only she wouldn't meet with him, but she was gone. Krishna was devastated. And even Purnamasi couldn't do anything to revive him. She went looking for Radha. She found Radha. After, the long story. She found Radha. She was in a cabin in the forest, talking to herself like a mad woman. I don't know why he'd do like this. I know who he is. But I'm so attached. I can't. So why do I do this? Why do I do this? She was mad. She was in a state of madness. Then Purnamasi knew what to do. She said, Krishna's going to give up his body. Of course, he doesn't have a material body to give up, but Krishna's going to give up his body. You have to come immediately. So she snapped out of the sulkiness and came back with Purnamasi. And Krishna was so pleased that he decided to crown her queen of Vrindavan. They had a big ceremony. Half the book is the ceremony of crowning and, enthroning Radha as the queen of Vrindavan. But the title of the book is Madhava Mahotsav, although it's about Radharani becoming the queen of Vrindavan. But the first half is all of this intrigue, the right wing and left wing gopis. It's interesting. Madhava Mahotsav. Jiva Goswami.
Thank you, Maharaj. The other question I had is, we talk about eternal associates of Lord Krishna.
Yes, we do.
So how does one become an eternal associate?
You don't become, you follow those that are. We somehow took a left turn when we should have gone right. And here we are. So you don't become. You become followers of. That's Raga Nuga Bhakti. You're followers of the Ragatmika Bhaktas.
So we have Lord Krishna from whom Lord Balram comes out, Radharani comes out.
But wait. Pardon me. You say comes out.
As an expansion.
But even, we can Radharani is not an expansion of Krishna. Radharani is Krishna's eternal pleasure potency. Now so I'm just correcting the language because it's misleading. It can be misleading.
Yes.
So it's not, eternal associates don't become eternal associates. They are eternally Krishna's eternal associates. They're expansions. There's, the right wing gopis are expansion. All the gopis are expansions of Radha, but it's not like once upon a time there was only Radha. And she looked at her watch and said, I think it'd be nice if there were some gopis. And whoop, there's all these gopis. That was great. It's not like that. There are expansions of her, but it's not a chronological expansion. So to become, that sounds like it's in time. So we're conditioned souls. We're discussing this very topic in the morning classes. Krishna is explaining it to Uddhava. At the end of Canto 11, Chapter 10, Uddhava asks, could you explain this teaching that says a living entity can be nitya baddha, and then the living entity can become nitya siddha, but nitya is nitya. So how does it work? Which is kind of what your question is. Well, Chapter 11 answers the question, but it's subtle. With our little pea brain, it's not easy to understand. So you have to hear it, and we can understand it that way.
So the same thing obviously applies even when we talk about his Yashodama, Devki. We're saying they all are eternal associates,
Yes.
whether it's in Vatsalya Bhav or any
Yes.
other Bhav.
Correct.
Okay.
It's a mystery, and at the same time, it's a science. And it's both a science and a mystery. It's mystery and a science. So one can explain it, but one isn't going to understand it with the pea brain. So there's a teaching, and by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that says you and me and all of the sadhakas, if we become proper followers of Rupa Goswami, we will also aspire for, in addition to proper sadhana, will not just only aspire, but become greedy for, this is Rupa Goswami's teaching as well, greedy for having a spiritual form. Because spiritual forms don't just pop out of the woodwork, they're bestowed. Now, it's a mercy process and an effort process at the same time. But it comes from Krishna and Krishna's Ragatmika Bhaktas. They bestow spiritual form. And one receives spiritual form by their mercy. And it's that spiritual form, listen carefully, that then takes birth somewhere where Krishna is performing his pastimes, his Bhoma Lila. His Bhoma Lila are his pastimes in this world, where he also takes birth, although he's unborn. What? And then not only he takes birth, although he's unborn, he performs childhood pastimes, baby pastimes, childhood pastimes, youth pastimes, and one can directly experience them and then enter Krishna Loka. But we're a long way from all of that. So back to your question, how does one become an eternal associate? You don't become an eternal associate. You can be an assistant of those who are eternal associates, and they accept you when you're qualified. So we have to be, what's the qualification? This intense eagerness, lobha, greed. It's right in Rupa Goswami's definition of what bhakti is.
Thank you, Maharaj. And another question. I would have preferred to ask it when the kids are not there, but so as parents trying to raise Krishna conscious children in,
They're used to hearing it.
in today's world, I find it difficult to figure out because the world is the way it is, and we give them all this knowledge and the Vaishnava etiquette, how to show your other cheek and tolerate and all that stuff.
Good.
So how do we prepare them for the outside world?
They're experiencing it regularly, and you may be wise and protective, and they're going to experience it slowly or medium or quickly. So you like get a GPS. The GPS tells you what to do. So then you can follow the GPS or not. Children will make choices, and then you prepare them. There's this out there. It's not like scare tactic. It's just being acquainted with the reality of what's out there.
Yes, that's where I was like, should we be telling them of stuff out there
It
to
depends.
prepare?
It depends. It depends on the child, and depends on their interest, and it's different. It's different for different parents. It's different for different children. It's hard to give a standard answer. We had this discussion in the car the other day about Radha's education, and there's this option and there's that option. What's best? Because it has to do with association and so forth and so on. And it's different for each person. So parents have to be really tuned in to their children, and the relationship needs to be a strong relationship. So the dependent, whether it's a child or a friend or a something, there's trust, and they can share anything. And when they can share anything, we don't freak out and say, "What?" Just, "Oh, really? You were exposed to that. How did that feel? What were your thoughts when that thing happened?" You help them process it. You don't because otherwise they just shut down and won't share stuff. So you have to be open and, help them process. Like, a loving person will help another loving person process. So they own the process, and then they'll know what to do the next time something like that happens. Or something that's different than that, how to process it. And they'll come to, this happened. How do I process it? Well, when that happened, what were your thoughts? You just keep guiding so that, they own the thought process, and that they learn how to navigate their way through what's out there. What it is, it is. So then how to be impactful in such a way that it's elevating the circumstance as much as you can. So what did you get the idea?
Yes. Thank you. And at the end, after all the questions are done, would you have 2 minutes to talk about the thing which Vanmali Prabhu wanted you to talk about, your experience with Srila Prabhupada in the Boston temple? We didn't get to hear that.
I'm not so keen on that. No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Not
Thank
so
you.
keen on that.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I had a question on how do we categorize the eternal associates, because they are expansions of Radharani. we understand.
Gopis are expansions of Radharani.
Yeah.
Not all associates in the spiritual world are expansions of Radharani.
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. So I'm aware of Vishnu Tattvas and we're all Jiva Tattvas. So what Tattva would they belong to, the eternal
Well,
associates?
one of the terms that we read, Vibhinangsa, there's different categories. Now it's a really, Jaiva Dharma goes into it in detail, like mind spinning detail. So that's a place you can go if you want to learn more about categories. They're angsas, or they're vibhinangsas, they're tiny angsas that are eternally connected with Krishna. And then the distinction amongst them is primarily in terms of rasa. And there's the 5 primary and the 7 secondary, and there's subcategories of all of those. And then how they experience those rasas is exhibited in different ways. But they're in the category, the tattva category, that they're vibhinangsa, that are not at all in touch with Maya. They're only in touch with the internal potency and Krishna. That's the category, the tattva that they're in. Do we have something online?
I have one question. One particular statement on your slide was, caught my attention, where it was written the material name is different from
The object.
the object, while the spiritual names are
Yes.
different. So the context of that statement was probably that the demigods' names are
Different.
from.
Yes.
So is Lord Shiva's name also considered to be
Yes.
different from
Yes.
Lord Shiva? Okay. So when we are referring to as demigods, anyone who is not on the Vishnu Tattva platform, that's
Yes.
what we are referring to as
That's right.
demigods.
As far as those in this world, yes. And then there's the Nitya Siddha Ragatmika associates of Krishna, they're eternal. Lalita is Lalita and Sridham is Sridham, and they're eternal.
Yeah, thank you. So Neetu Singhal has 3 questions. So first question, Hare Krishna Guru Maharaji. What is the difference between spiritual perfection and God realization? Are they the same?
Not necessarily. Because there's categories of God realization and spiritual perfection. Let's just say one may have realized Paramatma or the Vishnu form of the Lord, and that's God realization. But it's not necessarily a complete stage of spiritual perfection. We can say it's a category or type of spiritual perfection, but it's not complete. So they can be the same, but not necessarily. Depends on the stage, the complete mass of the realization of the individual.
Second question, how should we understand Bhava and Mahabhava stage? Are they different?
Yeah. Mahabhava stage is something that's exclusive for Radharani, and the Bhava stage is something that we can experience.
So third question has got 2 parts. The first part is, in Harinama Chintamani, Is there any explanation about Srimati Radharani?
Yes, but not elaborate. It's that, specifically, she's the spiritual counterpart, the Shakti counterpart of Krishna. So when he's speaking about the spiritual potencies, she's mentioned, because she's one of Krishna's principal spiritual potencies. But it's not elaborately discussed in Harinama Chintamani.
So part 2 of the third question is based on a thought that Radha and Krishna are one, but as a form manifestation.
As a which manifestation?
Form.
Form, yeah.
How Radharani manifests along with Krishna's form.
She's eternally manifest. How is Krishna manifest? But it's not a chronological, once upon a time Krishna was alone and was thinking, gosh, I'm feeling lonely. There's Radha. It's not a chronological manifestation, but they are of two forms. That's a particular verse found in Chaitanya Charitamrita. She can read it. It's there several times. Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Ladani Shakti Asmat. That verse. She can look it up.
Questions from Snehavalli Mataji. The first question is that the argument given by Mayavadis that in the heart of demigods reside Lord Vishnu, so worship the demigods. I'm thinking of the commentary given by one of the Vaishnava Acharyas on Ramayana. There they give the reason that Ram did not hit Ravan in the heart because Sita is in Ravan's heart.
Yes.
And in Sita's heart is Lord Ram.
Yeah.
And in whose heart all the living entities reside.
Yeah.
So the reasoning given by Mayavadis is very reasonable.
No.
Could you please comment?
Yeah, it's a poetic rendering of one Vaishnava poet. It's a poetic rendering of a Vaishnava poet.
Okay, second question. We discussed that devotees should not accept demigod prasadam. I am thinking that demigods are also devotees of the Lord,
Yes,
so they are Vaishnavas.
Yeah.
Our philosophy is devotees prasadam is Mahaprasad. Then why can't we accept demigod prasad?
Because proper offering of Vishnu Prasad to demigods, we can accept that. But worshipping to the demigods without offering first to Vishnu, then it's not prasad. That's it. Anything else in the room? Yes?
Guru Maharaj, all the offenses and rules about chanting, are they even applicable to children? Like they are trying to chant, but seems like it's just offensive,
Well,
distracted chanting.
culpability increases with knowledge.
Understood. And is it, what would be the preference to emphasize quality, like for a child versus quantity?
Well, it depends on the child. And sometimes just chant at all. Because, we're coaxing gently Vishaka to chant something regularly. So it depends on the child and, their propensities and their nature and everything. So how you encourage depends on the child.
Thank you.
Our enthusiastic one wants the microphone again.
Thank you, Maharaj. So I have two other questions, if that's fine. My first one is that based on demigod prasadam. So if we receive prasadam from demigods, can we just quickly in our head offer it to Vishnu and then eat it? Would that be an offense to Lord Vishnu?
If it's not, you can do that in other circumstances, but not so much in that circumstance. Let's just say, sometimes devotees, because of a business obligation, they're invited to have lunch with some other business associates, and they're very clear about their principles. So they may go to a place and they place an order for salad, fruit, and yogurt, supposing. Now, they may not eat anything, but they may sometimes, in their mind, they make an offering of what's offerable, but something that's already been offered to a demigod is not offerable, but something that's unoffered, that's sometimes something that devotees do. Or they just say, I brought my own. And some people, respect, this person is very strict. I was told, you've heard the family name of Hinduja? You're looking at Dad. Have you heard that name, Hinduja? It's a very wealthy, you heard the Birla family? There's wealthy, super mega wealthy families in India. One of them is the Hinduja family. So he had the practice, and everybody knew it, that he would only eat that came from the temple. Wherever he had a business, he would find out where the Hare Krishna temple was nearby, and he would order prasad from the temple. They're happy to supply, and he was happy to receive. He generously donated to the temple. And then when he had gatherings, he would serve whatever they wanted, but he would eat only Krishna prasadam, and they knew it. That's just the standard he lives by. Now, he's a wealthy guy, and he could do it, and people wouldn't raise an eyebrow. And some other people aren't so wealthy, and people raise eyebrows. But if somebody, it's become more trendy or like cool, acceptable. If you have some strict, supposing people are vegan, and they, everyone's sitting around eating gobbledygook, and so I'm vegan. So what can you eat? Well, I can eat this and this. So they respect. Wow, here's someone who's disciplined in their eating. So for a Vaishnava, it's we only take that's what's offered. So if there are circumstances where this can be offered in the mind. It's not something to make a habit of, but other people carry when they know they're going to be in a situation, they take prasadam with them. Yeah.
What about taking a small murti in your bag
Yeah, that's
and then just quickly offering it?
Yeah, it's possible. People are going to wonder what the heck is this person up to? What are you doing, man?
Pendants with Radha and Krishna.
You get the idea.
Yes.
You're creative. You figure it out.
My second question is, a lot of people do Lakshmi Puja, and Lakshmi Puja, which is only Lakshmi,
Yes,
not Narayan, but
Yeah.
Lakshmi.
I got it.
And what about the prasad from only Lakshmi Devi?
You know the answer.
Would that be okay?
No.
Isn't that eating prasadam from Radharani?
No. So what Radharani going to eat something that hasn't been first offered to Krishna?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki? Jai.